What a
beautiful punch. It really is. And also with Amir Khan swinging as well, just doubles the effect of the power as well. Just swings right into the shot.
The tactics were right, but he couldn't keep him off, could he? And he was put.
All right, hook that wobbles him. Spence might be going down again, and this one is over.
For years, boxing fans have begged for this matchup. But as Stephen A. shouted to millions of viewers, this isn't just another fight. This is the showdown that could change boxing history.
But overall, I have to say Crawford. If you go down the list and ask me about tactical advantages, most of them are Crawford. What Canelo has is size.
Two fighters, more than 80 wins, only one combined loss between them. Canelo, the undisputed super middleweight king, the man who conquered 4 weight classes, whose body punches break ribs and spirits. Crawford, the 3-division champion, the first man of the 4-belt era to become undisputed in 2 weight classes, the genius who dismantled Errol Spence Jr. with surgical precision. Stephen A. brings the fire. Canelo brings that Mexican power, that relentless pressure. He walks you down, he punishes you. Max counters with calm analysis. But Crawford is a chess master. He figures you out, then takes you apart piece by piece. This isn't hype for hype's sake. As both analysts remind us, this is bigger than belts. It's about greatness. It's about the moment boxing fans will argue about for decades. Will raw power crush perfect precision? Or will technical brilliance flip the script? This fight isn't about pay-per-view numbers or social media hype. It's about 2 fighters who have already done everything the sport could ask of them, now stepping into the ring not for titles, but for history. Canelo Alvarez has spent nearly a decade climbing through weight classes, taking on names like Gennady Golovkin, Sergey Kovalev, and Caleb Plant. He unified the entire super middleweight division in less than a year, becoming the first undisputed champion at 168 pounds in the 4-belt era. For years, he's carried boxing on his shoulders, fighting anyone, anywhere, at any weight from 154 to 175 pounds. On the other side is Terence "Bud" Crawford, a fighter who reached the top not with sheer size, but with skill, patience, and brilliance. In 2023, he didn't just beat Errol Spence Jr., he dismantled him, dropping him 3 times before the referee stopped the fight. That night, Crawford became the first male fighter in history to become undisputed in 2 weight classes, a record that even legends before him never touched. For Stephen A. Smith and Max Kellerman, this isn't just boxing's biggest fight, it's 2 eras colliding. The power and pressure of Canelo against the precision and adaptability of Crawford. A victory here isn't just another win on a record, it changes how we talk about greatness for the next 20 years. When Stephen A. Smith talks about Canelo Alvarez, there's a mix of admiration and warning in his voice. Because to Stephen A., Canelo isn't just a fighter, he's a statement. After losing to Floyd Mayweather back in 2013, many thought the young Canelo might fade, like so many promising fighters before him. Instead, he came back sharper, stronger, and more dangerous than ever. Over the years, Stephen A. has repeatedly called him a bad man with bad intentions, a fighter who doesn't just want to win, but wants to break opponents down piece by piece. Canelo's run in 2021 proved Stephen A. right. 4 fights in 11 months. Callum Smith, Billy Joe Saunders, Caleb Plant, all champions, all defeated. And not just defeated, dominated. His body shots became the stuff of nightmares for opponents, the kind that make even elite fighters wilt after a few rounds. Stephen A. often points to Canelo's composure under pressure. He doesn't waste punches. He doesn't lose his cool. He walks opponents down like it's inevitable, because for most of them, it is. Against Crawford, Stephen A. says, the question isn't whether Canelo has the power to hurt him. It's whether anyone moving up in weight can survive it for 12 rounds.
You know, on the other hand, Spence also has to worry about the fact that he's been through a lot in his life so far. And Crawford, although he also has been really about boxing for a lot of years now. Usually that guy will have the advantage in the moment of truth. And Crawford's always made adjustments. He's probably the best adjusting fighter in the sport.
If Stephen A. brings the fire when talking about Canelo, Max Kellerman brings the calm precision when talking about Terence "Bud" Crawford. For Max, Crawford isn't just talented, he's cerebral, the kind of fighter who dissects opponents with the patience of a chess master waiting for the perfect move. Crawford's dominance over Errol Spence Jr. in 2023 is the fight Max always points to. He didn't just win, he controlled everything: the pace, the distance, the angles. 3 knockdowns later, Crawford stood as the first male fighter in history to become undisputed in 2 weight classes during the 4-belt era. Max often describes Crawford as a fighter who downloads opponents in the early rounds. He studies patterns, reactions, and mistakes, then punishes them when it matters most. Switching seamlessly between orthodox and southpaw, Crawford forces opponents into positions they're not comfortable in, creating openings they never see coming. But for all his technical brilliance, Max says Crawford's composure under fire might be his greatest weapon. He never looks rushed, never looks rattled. Against a bigger, stronger opponent like Canelo, that calm under pressure might be the difference between surviving and winning. For Max, this fight isn't just size versus skill. It's a question of whether one man's fight IQ can outthink another man's raw power before the final bell rings. When Stephen A. Smith and Max Kellerman debate Canelo Alvarez versus Terence Crawford, this is where sparks really fly. Because stylistically, it's everything boxing fans dream about: raw power colliding with technical brilliance. Stephen A. always brings up Canelo's pressure, the way he walks fighters down, cuts off the ring, and throws those left hooks to the body that make even world champions fold. Canelo's the kind of fighter, Stephen A. says, who forces you to fight his fight. He drags you into deep water and doesn't let you out. For him, the matchup comes down to whether Crawford can take that kind of punishment for 12 rounds. Max Kellerman sees it differently. For him, Crawford's switch hitting, his ability to set traps and counter from both stances, is unlike anything Canelo has faced since Floyd Mayweather. Max points out that Crawford doesn't just adjust once, he adjusts constantly. One round, he's counterpunching, the next, he's walking you down. It's a rhythm most fighters can't solve before it's too late. Both analysts agree on one thing: this isn't just physical, it's mental. Canelo wants to impose his will, slow the fight down, make every punch count. Crawford wants to lure him in, change angles, and punish mistakes. And when power meets precision, history shows it can go either way. That's why this debate keeps running on every sports show, because neither Stephen A. nor Max is backing down.
It was a bad matchup for Alvarez, sure. Against Bivol, absolutely. He's much taller. A natural light heavyweight, we got it. And it was not the matchup boxing fans want to see. That's the
Stephen A. Smith doesn't sugarcoat Canelo Alvarez's strengths or his flaws. He calls Canelo one of the most complete fighters in the world, a man with power in both hands, defensive head movement, and a pressure style that forces opponents into mistakes. Stephen A. often highlights how Canelo controls distance with small steps, never rushing in recklessly. He points to fights like the knockout of Amir Khan or the body shot finish of Caleb Plant as proof that Canelo doesn't need high volume, just accuracy and timing. When Canelo hits you clean, Stephen A. says, the fight changes right there. But Stephen A. also reminds viewers of the Dimitri Bivol fight in 2022, where Canelo moved up to light heavyweight and struggled. He was outworked, kept on the back foot, and lost a clear decision. For Stephen A., that fight showed Canelo can be beaten by opponents who stick to a jab, stay disciplined, and don't get trapped on the ropes. That's why he sees Terence Crawford as dangerous. Smaller or not, Crawford fights with patience and accuracy, the exact style that's given Canelo problems before. If Canelo can't cut off the ring or slows down late, Stephen A. warns, judges might favor Crawford's clean counters over Canelo's pressure.
Who has the better speed?
You would imagine Crawford, given the fact that he is the naturally smaller fighter, and I would assume he could maintain an advantage.
Max Kellerman calls Terence Bud Crawford, a complete fighter in every sense. He points to Crawford's undefeated record, his ability to fight from both stances, and his calm under pressure as reasons why opponents fall apart when the rounds start piling up. Max always goes back to the Errol Spence Jr. fight in 2023 when talking about Crawford's strengths. That night, Crawford started slow, studied Spence for a few rounds, then took over completely, scoring 3 knockdowns before stopping him in the 9th round. Max says that kind of adaptability is rare, even among champions. Another thing Max highlights is Crawford's ability to control distance. He keeps opponents guessing with jabs, feints, and footwork that make it hard to land clean shots. Against someone like Canelo, who relies on cutting off the ring, that movement could be critical. But Max also acknowledges the unknowns. Crawford has never fought above 147 pounds. Canelo has fought as high as 175. Max questions whether Crawford's power and durability will carry up to a weight class where fighters hit noticeably harder. He also points out that Crawford sometimes starts slowly, giving away early rounds, a risky habit against someone as experienced and disciplined as Canelo. For Max, Crawford's brilliance is clear. The question is whether it holds up when the man across the ring is bigger, stronger, and just as smart.
You know, on the other hand, Spence also has to worry about the fact that he's been through a lot in his life so far. And Crawford, although he also has been really about boxing for a lot of years now. Usually that guy will have the advantage in the moment of truth. And Crawford's always made adjustments. He's probably the best adjusting fighter in the sport.
While Stephen A. and Max debate power versus precision, they both admit there are hidden factors that could decide this fight long before the scorecards. The first is weight. Canelo has fought as heavy as 175 pounds, winning a title there before moving back to super middleweight. Crawford has never fought above 147. That's a jump of 2 weight classes, and Max Kellerman often reminds viewers that carrying speed, stamina, and durability into higher divisions isn't guaranteed. Fighters sometimes look unbeatable at one weight, then ordinary when size and power catch up to them. The ring size matters too. Stephen A. points out that a larger ring favors movers and counterpunchers like Crawford, giving him space to reset and forcing Canelo to chase. A smaller ring, on the other hand, benefits Canelo's pressure style, cutting off escape routes and forcing exchanges at close range. Then there's judging style. Stephen A. notes that aggressive fighters often sway close rounds just by moving forward, even if their opponents land cleaner punches. Crawford's patient approach might win on stats, but lose on perception if Canelo stays the aggressor. Finally, pace could be everything. Canelo likes to control the tempo, slow things down, and pick his shots. Crawford often starts slow but builds round by round until opponents drown in pressure. Whoever sets the rhythm early might control the entire fight.
Last round, 68-66, Canelo. He's only 2 rounds old. Saunders took an awkward step back, and now he's holding on. Chris, your scorecard.
Stephen A. Smith doesn't hesitate when asked how Canelo Alvarez wins this fight. For him, it starts with patience and pressure. Canelo can't just chase Crawford around the ring. He has to cut off angles, trap him along the ropes, and make every punch count. Stephen A. always brings up Canelo's body shots for a reason. Against fighters like Callum Smith and Billy Joe Saunders, those hooks to the ribs and liver weren't just highlights, they were fight changers. Stephen A. believes that if Canelo commits to the body early, he can slow Crawford's footwork and make him easier to hit later. The second key is defensive discipline. Crawford excels at counterpunching, especially when opponents get reckless. Canelo has to stay behind his high guard, slip punches, and only open up when he's in position. Finally, Stephen A. says Canelo must control the pace. In fights where Canelo has tired late, like against Dimitri Bivol, his output dropped as the rounds wore on. Against a fighter like Crawford, who gets stronger as the fight progresses, conserving energy for the championship rounds could be the difference between a close decision and a late finish.
A short uppercut that we showed. There are the body punches. 28, there is the knockdown scored in round 10 by the champ.
Max Kellerman sees Terence "Bud" Crawford's path to victory completely differently from Stephen A.'s blueprint for Canelo. For Max, Crawford wins this fight by controlling distance and dictating terms from the opening bell. He often points to the Errol Spence Jr. fight as the perfect example. Crawford didn't just land counters. He made Spence reset over and over until the mistakes piled up. Against Canelo, Max says, Crawford has to start faster than usual. Falling behind early would let Canelo pressure him into into exchanges where size and power matter most. Another key for Max is stance switching. Crawford's ability to flow between orthodox and southpaw isn't just for show. It changes angles, forces opponents to hesitate, and creates openings for counters. Canelo is great at timing, but if he has to keep resetting against new looks, he might never find the rhythm he wants. Finally, Max believes Crawford must limit risks. That means jabbing, moving, and picking his moments carefully. If he trades too much, Canelo's power could end the fight quickly. But if Crawford frustrates him, racks up rounds, and forces mistakes, the fight could tilt his way on the cards or by late stoppage.
It's a bigger event than what I'm about to tell you, but it reminds me a lot of Marvin Hagler and Roberto Duran, which is largely forgotten among the four kings fights, as they say, but
Hagler being the aggressive. Hearns working that jab. He has a very quick jab. There's no denying. And he caught Hagler with two good jabs and a right hand that might have hurt Hagler. Tremendous pace in the first round. I expected this, Barry. Both guys are going at it. Hearns getting the better of it right now.
When Stephen A. Smith talks about Canelo Alvarez versus Terence Crawford, he often connects it to boxing's biggest moments. He points to fights like Sugar Ray Leonard versus Roberto Duran in 1980, where speed, precision, and ring IQ met relentless pressure and physicality. Those fights produced one of boxing's most famous trilogies and shaped both men's legacies for decades. Max Kellerman adds another layer, comparing the stakes to Marvin Hagler versus Thomas Hearns, 3 rounds of chaos that became one of the most iconic nights in the sport's history. He says while Canelo Crawford might not turn into that kind of brawl, the meaning behind it feels the same. 2 elite fighters colliding at the peak of their powers. Both analysts also mention Mayweather versus Pacquiao, a fight fans demanded for years. But Max notes that Canelo Crawford comes together at a better time.
Notion that Terence Bud Crawford should move up 3 weight classes, 21 pounds, to fight Canelo Alvarez. He's entirely too small. Jamel Charlo already proved that. Y'all remember that scene from Rocky? Remember that scene from Rocky 2? When
Stephen A. leans toward Canelo Alvarez. He points to Canelo's experience at higher weights, his power that's carried across 4 divisions, and his ability to stay calm under pressure. If Canelo cuts off the ring, lands to the body early, and forces exchanges, Stephen A. says, Crawford won't be able to keep him off for 12 rounds. Max Kellerman sees it another way. He believes Terence Crawford's adaptability makes him the more dangerous fighter over 12 rounds. Max often brings up how Crawford downloads opponents early, figures out their timing, and then takes over, like he did against Errol Spence Jr. If Canelo starts to fade late, Max thinks Crawford's speed and precision could steal the fight on the scorecards or even produce a stoppage. Neither analyst calls it a blowout. Stephen A. says Canelo wins by late TKO or close decision. Max says Crawford wins by unanimous decision after early adjustments. What they do agree on? That this fight will be talked about for years, no matter who has their hand raised.
Facing off in a once-in-a-lifetime event. I put my money where my mouth is and I don't want to smile, just allow me.
As the debate winds down, both Stephen A. Smith and Max Kellerman admit one thing. No matter who wins, this fight will define an era. Stephen A. calls it the fight boxing needed, a matchup that goes beyond belts and divisions, one that gives fans something to argue about for decades. Max Kellerman nods, adding that fights like this are rare because both men risk everything: records, legacies, and pound-for-pound supremacy. For fans, that's what makes it special. Canelo Alvarez brings the power, the pressure, the legacy of a 4-division champion who's fought almost everyone. Terence Crawford brings the precision, the patience, the genius that's made him boxing's ultimate problem solver. And when the bell rings, there are no excuses left. Stephen A. believes Canelo's body attack and ring control will be too much. Max says Crawford's timing and adaptability will flip the script. Both agree the winner will walk away not just with victory, but with a claim to being the best fighter of this generation. So now it's your turn. Who takes it, Canelo or Crawford? Drop your predictions below, because once the gloves touch, the debate ends in the ring.